Nonprofit food programs are reeling from the impact of the recent executive orders issued by President Donald Trump, which have frozen federal funding and restricted key resources for charitable organizations. The abrupt changes have left food banks, meal delivery services, community kitchens, and farming programs scrambling to fill the gaps for millions of Americans. One of the most significant blows to nonprofit food programs came in the form of an executive order suspending certain federal aid programs for 90 days, which has effectively stalled financial support for food assistance initiatives. Many organizations rely heavily on federal grants to stock pantries and distribute meals, and without this funding, they face severe shortages. In addition to funding freezes, executive orders restricting agricultural imports and tightening regulations on government food contracts have exacerbated supply chain issues. Food banks that depend on surplus United States Department of Agriculture commodities are experiencing delays, leaving shelves empty. Keeping up with the demand to feed the American people requires government help. With these freezes, the food won't get to the distribution centers fast enough. There are fewer deliveries and higher prices, which makes it almost impossible to keep up with the demand. With inflation driving up the cost of groceries, demand for nonprofit food assistance has surged. Many families who are already struggling to make ends meet now find themselves with even fewer options. Hunger doesn't take a break. As food insecurity worsens, nonprofit organizations must rely on community donations and local support to keep their operations running. However, without swift federal action, millions of Americans may face even greater hardship in the coming months. Recent executive orders have also introduced significant challenges for American farmers, affecting funding, research, labor, and trade. The USDA was ordered to freeze funds for several programs established under the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. This action left hundreds of farmers responsible for millions of dollars in unpaid bills for conservation projects aimed at improving soil health and water quality. The sudden halt in funding has created financial uncertainty for those who have already commenced these initiatives. Additionally, the dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, has led to the closure of agricultural research laboratories at land-grant universities in 13 states. These labs were instrumental in advancing seed technology and developing global markets for American commodities. The administration's executive orders on immigration have also introduced uncertainty regarding the availability of agricultural labor. These policies have already led to labor shortages, which has resulted in many crops being left to rot in the fields. This ultimately will increase operational costs for farmers, thus being passed on to the consumer. Our political correspondent, Mary Jane Hungart, sat down with Eli Bacon from Sierra Harvest to discuss the recent temporary pause memorandum and how it impacts our community.
What could happen with the removal of these types of funds are a lack of technical support and education and training for future farmers, from Sierra Harvest perspective. Certainly, if other elements are cut, there are programs out there for farm workers. There's certainly a concern around farm workers who are or are not here legally. We are already starting to see the impact of that in the fields, and that farmers are having a hard time securing labor. We are about to go into farming season, and certainly if there is still fear around that, right or wrong, we could absolutely have an impact on our abilities to secure food. And for rural communities like ours, what that leaves us is we are now then reliant upon the larger industrial agriculture providing those things. And so again, it goes back to value systems. And if you like organic food and regenerative ag food, and you like local farmers and you want to support them, part of that is supporting the labor that gets the food onto the plate. So we are seeing already that impact on a small scale. I would predict that if these types of funding crunches continue to happen, we would see that on a larger scale, and that does make us vulnerable.
We encourage you to check out the full interview on our YouTube channel. The link is provided in the description.